Hello and welcome to the next episode of our Positive Progress podcast. I'll get that right yet, too many P's. With me, Robin Harris of Wellbeing, and my colleague
Nigel from Interact Communication and Connection.
And Nigel and I come together just to have those well-being conversations with the hope that you, as a listener, a watcher, will also feel that you're part of the conversation. We want it to be kind of like we're sitting in a coffee shop, just having a chat and bringing up those questions that quite often a lot of us have inside of us and we just want to explore. This is just space for that exploration. And we don't really share with each other the topics that we're going to talk about beyond maybe just a title so that we know what to say at the beginning. But today it's over to Nigel. And Nigel, you're going to be talking about the power of stop. So without any further ado, Nigel, what is the power of stop? Tell us more.
I like the way you did that then, Robin. The power of stop. It is a bit like that, actually, because this is something which is hugely important to me, not only from the point of view of talking to other people about it and hopefully sort of helping them on their journey to sort of be as good as they can be, this idea of positive well-being, but also for me personally, it's a huge thing because of the fact that when I went through my own period of depressive illness, this was something which was almost like a revelation for me, in as much as the basic idea here is everything that we're talking to you about today is completely useless. Now, don't switch off. I'm not saying this, it's not. Let me explain myself first.
There's an unless or a but in there, I hope.
There is. Oh, yeah, most definitely. Everyone's going, no, I don't mean actually it's useless. I think that what we're talking about is very useful in a very simple, straightforward and sensible way. And that's what we're sort of aiming at. That's what we're trying to achieve. But the reason I say it's completely useless is because I don't think that you can implement any of this stuff, however good it is, unless you create a moment, unless you create a stop. When I say the power of stop, it's something which is very important to me personally. Plus, it's something I talk to other people about, and hopefully it can be very useful to them. And this is a very simple, straightforward and practical and effective idea in relation to how you make that room, how you actually implement all these things that we're actually talking about today, or things that people might talk to other people about, or they might see online and stuff like that. The reason I say that is because of the fact that all this is good information, all this is good practical stuff. But unless you create that gap somewhere on your journey, on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, or whatever, you cannot put this stuff into action. Having this information is only part of the solution. It's only part of the way that you can move forward and make things better. So this is something that's very important to me personally as well, because of the fact that when I had my the major episode and some other episodes of depressive illness some time ago, this was something that I learned for myself. This was something that I found was of huge help to me because I was actually literally saying to myself, stop. And what I'm going to say is, if you need to say the word, say the word. Obviously, you can choose to say it in front of other people, or you can choose to say it on your own to yourself, or say it in your mind, whichever suits you. But actually create an actual moment when you say stop. And what that does, it stops you from carrying on what I call the crazy train. In a video that I made not so long ago, right, I used a part of a video from Ozzy Osbourne called The Crazy Train. And the reason I said that, or put that in, was because of the fact that I'm seeing all these people around me who are constantly going, And what they're not doing is actively and deliberately thinking about creating that moment. You've got the info, you've got the techniques, you've got whatever you want to call them, but they're no good unless you give yourself that room. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, because otherwise, how do you put those things into practice? How do you really sit with them and feel into them and know how to employ them in your own life. Because chances are we've come across them through somebody else, through what somebody else has written, through something that we've seen online, maybe through a podcast that we've heard. And unless we can then translate that into, well, how does it look in my life? How do I put that into practice? And I think we need to stop and sit with things. And we need to stop in order to have the space to put the new learning in.
Indeed, yeah.
And I think of it kind of like the athlete, just as you were talking there. I had this kind of image of the athlete who trains and trains, and they do a lot in their mental training as well. So, for example, the high jumper who sees themselves running up to the jump and lifting up off the ground and going over the jump. And they may be doing their weight training and their cardiovascular and all of that, but then they have to take a day off. Because if they don't take a day off, their body can't rebuild, it can't assimilate. And we need to do that internally as well. We need to take that day or time, that moment, when we stop, pause, reflect, have the inner stillness where we can listen to our inner thoughts and our intuition as to, right, well, how does this work in my life? I've seen it in somebody else's. I've listened to what they say, but how do I put it into practice? Because I see so many people who say, I know it. I've done all the learning. I've studied. I've read all the books, but nothing's changing. And I don't know where to start to put it into practice. And I think
if you think about trying to jump off a moving train, I'm just thinking now as you're talking, right? What's going to happen? Again, a simplistic idea, but like really, really relevant to what we're talking about here now, is if you're trying to jump off a moving train, what's going to happen? You're either going to kill yourself or you're going to get hurt, at least hurt. So there has to be a point when that vehicle of whatever description actually comes to a halt. I in my mind, I see this as two sort of separate things. The first thing over here is the stuff, right? This is the knowledge, this is the background, this is the techniques, blah 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 blah. But that is not only just half the story, that is a useless half of the story unless you get the opportunity to do this bit, which is making that room. I was somebody who didn't make that room. I was somebody who didn't take that time. And I didn't realize when I was coming up to my sort of what I call my crash and burn, right? That's the way I describe it. When I was coming up to that, I was going through a period without knowing it, through my own ignorance. I was not knowing that I was just going all the time. And I'm not talking about somebody who was hugely busy. I'm talking about someone who was constant. I'm talking about someone who never made that space. And that's why it's such an important thing to me. But it's also something, if you think about this now, right, there's two elements to this. There's the altruistic element and then the selfish element. The selfish element first, which is, I think they're equal. I think they've got equal importance, to be honest. I'd like to be the nice bloke that says the altruistic thing is what this is all about, but it's not really.
But
For me, again, it's my own opinion. Sorry, go on.
Is it selfish or is it self-care? Is it inner care? Because unless we do that, we have nothing to give. Is it separate for the altruistic or is it all just interdependent and interconnected?
I think it's interconnected. I mean, that's a good point, really, because when I say about selfish, that maybe that's the wrong word. Maybe we should be saying self-interested, because that's not necessarily a negative thing. It's good to sort of be interested in yourself and how you move forward, how you develop, etc., etc. The self-interest side of it is the fact that at that particular point, I needed something for me. But going back to what you were just saying, which is absolutely correct, that was connected to my ability to function and do things for other people. And when I say do things for other people, I had a youngish family at the time, so I had to look after my boys. I had to consider my wife. I had to consider the effect it was having on my friends and all those sort of things, you know? even though I see these things as two very, very separate things, they have this. You mentioned in one of the previous presentations, one of the previous podcasts, about this golden thread, and that's a term that I like very much, because it is exactly that. It's not a negative thing. It is this golden thread. It's this thing that gathers it together. But if you look at these two things, those two elements are hugely important, because this is not about me being able to help anybody else unless I'm fit myself. And
You have to fit your own oxygen mask before you can fit somebody else's, because if you don't, you might keel over, or you can't pour from an empty cup. Fill your cup
I haven't
first.
told you this, have I? I mean, I genuinely haven't told you, other than the heading and the outline idea, what I'm going to talk about. And you just preempted exactly what I was just going to say. When I was a police officer, very good. You're very good, you are, aren't you? When I was a police officer, I noticed that there were certain acronyms in relation to how you dealt with things, right? All the emergency service have these things. It's a letters, da, 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 da. And I'm not being patronizing now, but some people might not understand what acronyms are. It's like little sort of buzzwords or letters that lead you to remember things in a certain order. And I noticed that S was appearing on all these things, and the textbooks were changing, and the rules were changing, and not so much the regulations, but the way that we were instructed to do things was changing. And S had never appeared before, and it was, for some reason, it was appearing at the beginning of all these acronyms. So let me give an example. Dealing with a road accident, right? There's a certain routine that you go through, obviously, in relation to the actual safety of the person, etc., obstruction of the road, da, 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 da. And these were really, really helpful, because you would switch on and you'd go, right, the word is blah, 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 whatever, right? But this S that they put on there, which is exactly what you were alluding to about this, it could be self, actually. It actually stood for safety. Mm. And the idea being that if you don't look after yourself in these more physically than mentally now, then you are absolutely useless for anybody else. You cannot be doing your job. You cannot be helping other people or fulfilling your role if you are not safe yourself. Now, the one in relation to road accidents, right? It sounds a bit obvious, but safety is in relation to, am I in the right place? Am I going to get knocked over? Yeah. Because I, as a police officer, am there to help other people. If I get hit by a car, that's done. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Alluding to what you were just saying, this S appeared, and it was safety or self. It could be self, actually, which is more in keeping what you were just saying.
But safety works as well. And for me, I've got a chapter in my book that's dedicated to safety, because if we don't have that in place, maybe that's one of the reasons people find it difficult to stop, because there's a lack of sense of safety. Sometimes when we feel unsafe, we're in that fight or flight mode, which is keep going, keep going, keep going. It's flight, isn't it? And I've known people who, they're even maybe runners or cyclists or joggers, and they are literally just trying to keep going, keep going, keep going, because in a sense that brings them a sense of safety. I'm taking action, I'm moving myself either away from or towards, even if only metaphorically, that thing that I need in order to feel safe. And for me, that's one of the things that I address first and foremost, to make sure that the person feels safe in themselves. And it can be physical, emotional, psychological. So again, if we're wanting to use the power of stop, we need to make sure that in stopping, we feel safe. Because otherwise, our whole insides is just going to be pushing us to, no, keep going, find something else to do, be distracted. Yeah, and I'm sure we can both think of examples of either ourselves or somebody we know who, when they attempt to stop or to meditate or get mindful or any of those things that we're often encouraged to do, they're looking for distractions. They find it really difficult to sit still, which in itself is a trauma response. Completely, self and safety, maybe they're just interchangeable in this context.
Another question I was going to ask was, who is this for? And this is a sort of a metaphorical question, an actual question, because it's something I have an understanding in relation to myself, but who is this for other people? Is this for me alone? Or maybe we're referring back to what we talked about a couple of minutes ago now, right? Is this for me alone? Is that enough in itself to be of benefit? Or is this for me to be able to be a good citizen, to be a good father, to be a good friend, to be a good whatever? I can't even think of any other examples, but a good person for other people. I don't know. I'm not quite sure.
And are they separate? Because again, talking about the golden thread, I think so many of these things in our lives are interconnected and interdependent. And no man is an island. No person is an island. As soon as we're taking care of ourselves, that's flowing over to those around us, whether they're friends, family, work colleagues, whatever. And if you want to get all quantum physics on it as well, there's the I can't remember the name of it, but as soon as two charged particles like electrons are connected, they're always connected. So even if you move them to opposite sides of the earth, you do something to one and the other one responds in the same way. And it's the same with people. As soon as two people are connected, even if they're separated by even a considerable distance, when you do something to one person, it impacts on the other. Or when something changes for one person, it impacts on the other. And we can get to the level of sensitivity to pick that up. And even like when you think of a friend and they message you or they phone you, or you see an email or you receive a letter from them, or you decide to give them a call and you find that they're actually in a place where they needed to talk to you, we can pick up on these things when we tune into them. But unless we give ourselves the power of that stop, we may not be picking up on these things. We may not be listening, having enough stillness around ourselves to tune out the other stuff and just focus in on
that. I think you're absolutely right, but I also think it's a practical thing as well, which is,
oh yeah,
do you know when you say, let's use you as an example, right? I'm thinking to myself, I need to speak to Robin about so and so. I really do need to. I can't. I haven't got the time. I got to do this. I've got to do that. She'll have to wait. That's okay. Now I've created a moment where I'm making you wait, and you don't even know what you're waiting for. You don't even know that I want to speak to you. But in my mind, I'm saying I've already created this negativity by saying, "Oh, Robin will have to wait. She's not the priority at the moment," sort of thing. When I get to calm down, and I've said this before. I don't know if I mentioned this in the previous presentations. I use, and this is just my key for me. This is my key word. I use a Spanish word, tranquilo, which stands for calm or quiet. And I'm in a position now. I was aware the other day that I'm in a position now where I switch to this mode so quickly and so easily. It's a wonderful thing, really. But it didn't happen. I had to make it happen. So when I say to myself, I like Robin, that's going to have to wait because of no particular reason. If there's like a family emergency, right? Then you never stop. You go, right, got to do this, got to do that. You go into that mode where, or I go into that mode, excuse me, I go into that mode where I've got a bop, 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 bop mentality. And it's good because it gets things sorted. It's organized. It's sensible. But if I'm just putting off talking to Robin because of I can't stop, I haven't got time to talk to Robin now, and then I think to myself, and this is something that people watching this could really think about, and this is really important. Am I just moving for the sake of moving? Is there a reason why I have to get to that next point that precludes me from talking to Robin? If there's a real reason, that's fine. But a lot of people cause a huge amount of stress and pressure and weight on their shoulders because of the fact that they turn around and they say, it's just the action of moving. It's not where they're going. It's not what they're doing. It's just, I gotta keep doing this. And interestingly enough, a few days back, you put something on Facebook, which was a similar sort of idea. Let's talk a little bit about that and see if we can pull out some similarities between those things. I think they were fairly close.
Absolutely. That was, I take it, the post where I said I took a day off.
Yeah. I did something, you said something, I did something really, I don't know, unusual for me
Something
or
that's really
strange.
challenging for
Okay.
me. Challenging, I
Yeah.
think, well, it's a common
Yeah.
word for me. That was my awareness of, I could do with a moment of stillness. And listening to what you were just saying, it was making me think of, it's what we prioritize. So if we've got the family emergency, that's our priority. Naturally, appropriately, that is our priority. Presumably, if we don't want to be involved in the family crisis, that may be something else. But if
Yeah.
we are
Well,
supporting,
maybe
if
it's
we have a,
bottom of the list then, Robin. You
yeah,
put it right
that's
to
when you
the
run
back
away.
of the way. Yeah.
But if that is something where we have a supportive role that we are feeling is appropriate for us, then that is our priority. So other things get pushed down to lower on the list, and we get to them when the crisis has passed, because the nature of crisis, you hope, is that it's short and doesn't go on for too long. Not always the case, but you prioritize because you think, I need to get through this and I want to give my support, so this is my priority right now. And if we're doing that consciously and choosing it, absolutely is completely appropriate. But for me, it's when I'm just, like you said, moving for the sake of moving, and I'm not consciously thinking, is this a priority in my life right now? Do I need to do this right now? Are there other things maybe that I'm putting off and not addressing? Because sometimes if it's about financials and things, I do want to be an ostrich. I want to stick my head in the sand and not deal with it. I have all these other things which are so pressing, and the deadline is tomorrow, if not yesterday. So I can quite easily get myself on my to-do list that just gets longer and longer and longer, and put things off unless I get conscious and think, no, no, hang on a minute. What's the real priority here? Or where am I not feeling safe and I'm feeling the need to run, stick my head in the sand, whatever it might be, and then see, well, how can I support myself to take that stop and to be more conscious in my choices of priorities? So that was why I needed to do that at that point, to take that day off, because I realized I had been just go, 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 particularly because of doing my book. And there was a lot of stuff around that. And it did have deadlines. Yes, it was an appropriate priority for a time. But now that the book is published, I can take a bit of a breather, take that moment of stop. And because of the kind of person I am, which I've discovered more about through looking into human design, but I realize now that I need to book that in my diary. I can't just wait for it to happen, because it never happens if I don't make that conscious decision, like you say, to go stop. I'm not
No, it
somebody who
has
will
to. It
naturally
has. This
stop.
is exactly what I'm saying. This is
Mm,
what exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this active, this deliberate act of
mm,
creating that space, because
yes.
it's not. Yeah, I mean, you said it, but it was a challenge for you to take a day off. I mean, I'm going to ask you in a second why you thought it was a challenge, but before that, I want to say, to reiterate what you just said, or to back that up, because this is not about a maybe I'm gonna I do when it boo boo boo. This has got to be a stop, and it's okay. It's good for you to stop for the reasons we've already discussed. You were just talking about the fact that you put it into your diary. You have that's your process. That's what you have to do. That's how you almost from what you were saying, almost force yourself to stop. But like you talked about it being a challenge, and we'll talk maybe a little bit more about why it was a challenge in a minute. But this has got to be something which is a definite stop. Now is that moment, and it's like a bosh, and that then creates whatever period of time. It might be a minute, it might be an hour, it might be a day, or whatever. It has to be something which is something you do actively. It has to be something that doesn't just sort of meander along, because what you do, the next thing you do is you don't do it. If you don't create this moment, you then are less than you could be for yourself or for others. Do you see what I mean? This is not just about you being selfish. This is about you being, I use this phrase all the time, being the best you can be in your own special circumstances. That's when you're your most useful. That's when you're most effective in what you say and what you do for yourself and for other people. Go back to my question of earlier on, who does it benefit? It benefits indirectly, it benefits everybody. It benefits you, and it also benefits people around you. But I was intrigued by you saying you were challenged to take a day off.
It felt challenging for me because, as I was saying earlier, I always feel I have a to-do list that's getting longer and longer and longer. I'm a little bit attracted to shiny objects. So I think, ooh, that looks good. I could do that. And ooh, I've just had this impulse. My muse has spoken, and I could create this, and I could write that. And I'm adding to my to-do list all the time. And as soon as something is on my to-do list, I feel I've got this sense that I need to do that. And that's a priority. But I need to remember as well, if I don't take care of myself, I won't have the energy to do it. And if I do it, I will not be giving it the energy that it deserves. I need to, and I hate the word need to, because that again sounds like I have to, I must, I should. I don't like those words. But that sense of consciously deciding it's time for me to plug myself in and recharge my battery right now. I do it with my phone every night. My husband has an electric car. He does it with his car every night. So it's just that self-care. Knowing that if I don't do it, the things that I then push myself to just keep going, keep doing, you've got to get through this to-do list and this chatter in my head, I'm not giving it the attention it needs, the energy it needs. It's not going to come out looking the best that it can be, because I've only got half of myself, sort of thing. I'm running on half battery with what I'm putting into it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it just backs up exactly what I was saying. So I've sort of convinced you, have I?
Absolutely. Not that I needed convincing. I think you're preaching to the converted with me, because I'm very much
Hallelujah.
into the
Yeah.
self-care, and the power of pause is how I've used it in the past. But pause, stop, it's that I'm going to take some space, some time and space just for me.
Well, sorry about that, folks. We just lost the signal there. Must be lots of people online playing games and things like that. So we're back with you now. If I just hang on a moment, just move that more or less where I was. Hopefully that's okay for you. Robin had just said about the fact that she's it's like preaching to the converted. When I asked her if I'd actually convinced her about this particular idea, and she said that make time and space just for me. So that was an interesting thing for me, in as much as that moves me on to what I wanted to say about how you make this happen. We talked earlier on about the fact that it's all well and good just having the information, but you have to put it into place. And the thing I wanted to say really was, making this happen is ridiculously easy. I know we deal in simple as much as we can, but it's just stupid easy, right? However, the bit that is difficult, the bit that requires attention, or the bits that require attention, is the bit before and the bit after. What I mean by that is the fact that you have to make resolve before this occurs for this to be something that you want. It has to be something that you believe in and has value and can benefit you. Then we'll go back to the actual implementation bit at the end, the really simple bit. And then afterwards, equally difficult is the fact that you have the resolve to make this a regular thing, to actually build this into your sort of your routine. I mean, you were saying, Robin, earlier on about the fact that the only way that you can make this happen is to, as the Americans say, diarize, to actually put it down in your diary. I mean, that's
Yeah,
your method. That's the way you do it.
I need to actually block out time for it. Otherwise, my time gets swallowed up in all of the other things that clamor for one's attention. So yeah, it's that being conscious and aware that I need to take some time. And if I'm going to take it, I need to make it. I need to ring fence that time and make it a non-negotiable. Like you were saying, that I'm going to do it. Whatever else is trying to squeeze its way in, no, that is my time. And it's important. Like you were saying, the value and as you were saying earlier, about that it's not just for me, I'm doing it for everybody else as well. Because
Indeed.
it's the one I've written a blog about. It's not just the greatest gift we can give ourselves, it's the greatest gift we can give everybody else around us. It's really generous. It's not selfish at all.
It's simple in as much as, I mean, I know I do that word to death, right? But I just love it. I love to look for any simple solution to a problem as the first port of call. That's just the way my brain works. That's just the way that I think is a sensible use of my time or somebody else's time to try and get the best that you can get. And if you think of this particular thing now, right? I just sort of I just went, it's ridiculously easy to do. And it is, do it. The bit in the middle is the easy bit. The bit before, the bit afterwards are the bit that require a little bit of, as I use the word, a good word, resolve. They require some application in relation to you knowing this is a good thing to do, understanding its benefits, and afterwards maintaining it, keeping it going. And just to finish this point off, let's imagine some very unscientific numbers in relation to the amount of benefit you can get from this particular thing that we've been talking about. And say, for argument's sake, if you do it once, there will be some benefit. There actually will be some benefit for a short period of time. So like I say, extremely unscientific, but say that gives you 5% benefit. So obviously, logically, if you do the same thing, you do it twice, it gives you 10% benefit, then 15, 20, and so on. So therefore, the more that you put in, the more that you get out. Like most things in life, I suppose, really, yeah?
Absolutely. And I'm just listening to an audiobook at the moment, which is by Joe Dispenza. And it's something about I think it's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Because whatever mental habits and behavioral habits, all of the habits that we have, they become where we inhabit. So they become the life that we lead. And the more that we make these things a regular habit, like you say, you get 5%, 10%, 15%, because the more that you do these things over and over again, the more it becomes hardwired into your brain. So it becomes easier, it becomes more habitual, and it just becomes your norm. And as it becomes your norm, your whole life changes because you're doing something different. If we do something the same all the time and expect a different answer, that's the definition of madness.
The definition of madness, yeah.
Yeah. So if we want things to change, like you say, it requires action. But when we keep that action simple, we're more likely to do it because it feels achievable. It's like having those SMART goals. So specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time measured.
Time scaled or time whatever.
Yeah. That's why I love simple in this aspect, because it means we're more likely to do it if it feels easy. Why wouldn't you do it? If you know you're going to get a benefit, why wouldn't you do it? And the more we do it, the more hardwired it becomes.
If you talk about muscle memory, right? People talk about muscle memory in relation to, and all the doctors and surgeons out there now, don't shout at me, please, because I know this is not physiologically correct, but this is just making the point. If you're talking about muscle memory, you're talking about exactly that, how your body gets used to a certain routine and it understands and remembers. But don't forget what's remembering. It's not your body remembering. It's this up here that's remembering.
Well, it's all of it.
Sorry?
It's all of it.
Well, yeah. But I mean, this is where, in my opinion, it's stored, right? Again, I'm going to get shouted at by surgeons and doctors. But the point is that the brain is a sort of a muscle. So it's what I call mental muscle memory. And it's exactly that which, as you just said, quite rightly said, makes this part of, I go so far as say, not just that it makes it part of your routine, it makes it part of you. It makes it part of your life. It makes it part of the way that you function, you know? Yeah. And I understand that people are busy. People have got stuff to do. They're rushing around and all that. But please make the effort to at least try this and see the benefits of you taking that time out, the benefits that it can actually give to you and to other people. And interestingly enough, if I could just move on from there, if it's all right with you, slightly, you mentioned previously about prioritization, which is another really, really interesting thing to me. And I know it's something that you talk a lot about as well. So what I was going to say in relation to that is I've done something, a presentation called Stick It in the Box. And it was dressed up as some cheesy 1970s game show, right? Stick it in the box, stick it in the box, and all that sort of thing, right? Just by way of doing what I like to do, which is to create this image in people's minds, to give them this, even if they thought, well, that was terrible, what an awful song, they're thinking about it. That was a dreadful thing to actually do. They're thinking about it. So if you can get it in there by that particular means, that's fine, because bad is good and sometimes good is bad. So therefore, the idea is, again, straightforward, which is this thing in your mind, create these 3 boxes. This is all about mental imagery. And the boxes are next to each other. They can be on top of each other. They can be in different rooms. It makes no difference. In your mind, it's your house. It's your place. You do what you want to do with it. But for me, these 3 boxes sit next to each other. And on the top, it says, never, later, now. The never one has got like a little slit in the top, like a post box. And that's the stuff that you can't deal with, world events, weather, whatever. You put it in, forget it. You will never, ever get that out again because you have no control over it. The one in the middle is the intriguing one, really, because this is the stuff that you need to do, but you don't need to do it now. It's not life-threatening. It's not financially sort of bankrupting. It's none of those things. So they put the stuff in there. This box has got a lid on it. And the lid has a key. And you can actually put stuff in the box. There's a key. You can open it up as and when, take the stuff out, and either deal with it then, or you can decide it doesn't need to be dealt with, or you can promote it to the now box and say, that's my next task. And the one on the end, which is the now box, is completely open. There's nothing on the top of it at all. And the reason for that is because this is the stuff which must be dealt with now as a priority. Because that's the stuff that's going to have a detrimental effect on you, somebody else, in some way. You know the sort of stuff I'm talking about: medical stuff, physical stuff, family stuff, money stuff, stuff like that. If you can actually create these images in your mind, this is not some sort of magic. This is just a means of putting things in their places. One, I could go that way, going backwards. 1, 2, 3, like that. It sounds simplistic. It is simplistic, but it's completely useless if you didn't think of it. It's completely useless if you don't visualize it. What I'm saying here is the fact that an awful lot of people, and this is going to come back to something that you talk quite a lot about, and it just like this one last sentence now. There's an awful lot of people who have experienced an awful lot, a huge amount of stress and tension because they don't prioritize, and they do what I call scattergun thinking or scattergun problem solving, where they don't create these boxes, they don't put their own system in place, and therefore everything is thrown in this one box, and it's all like that all the time. And there's everything going on, and it's all flying around them, and I don't know what, I do a bit of this, bit of that, bit of this, bit of that. And they never ever solve any problems properly because they do a little bit of solving that one and a little bit of solving that one. And sooner or later, it accumulates to a point where they are thinking, I've got all this stuff surrounding me and nothing is sorted. Absolutely nothing has been actually concluded in any way. And that is the scattergun thinking. So I'll just finish now by saying, please have a little think about this stick it in the box. You don't have to go stick it in the box. But if that helps you remember it, then great. But 3 boxes, never, later, now. Keep that in mind, and you won't suffer with this scattergun thinking. Now, bear in mind, I've just mentioned that there's something similar that you talk about in that particular area. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
What I was saying earlier about grounding and getting centered, you mean? And I think that's what helps us to kind of take a step back. Because sometimes when, like you're saying with that scattergun, we just feel so in the moment, so under all of these things that are buzzing around, that we can't see the wood for the trees. So when we can get grounded and centered, and we can do that just by focusing on our breath And there's the Heart Math Institute in America. You can look them up online, and they teach lots of good breathing techniques. Whatever it is that works for you, I've got some on my YouTube channel as well, some things for grounding and centering, but that gives us a little bit more mental clarity, helps us to take that step back so that we can look at, as if it's a stage and you're watching what's going on in a play, rather than being in the play and on the stage and one of the actors. You can take that step back and then you can assess. And that idea of circles of control, you might have seen that diagram. What is, like you said, the weather or government or these things that are totally outside of our control? We can't do anything about them. So giving our energy to those things is not worth our energy. We have far more important things to be doing with our energy than throwing it at things that we can't control anyway. So focusing down by doing that, by taking that step back, literally taking a breath, getting that moment of pause or stop through that breath, and then weighing up which box does it go in, what is the priority? Because we need to prioritize. And sometimes the priority is ourselves. And again, as we've said, in making ourselves the priority, we're benefiting those around us as well. And then at other times, it might be the family crisis or something that we have to respond to right now. So like you said, in the now box. But I think that's a great idea, because it really helps us to figure out what is so important. What are the things I want to spend my time on? And I took a course years ago where they talked about looking from the deathbed view, which sounds very morbid. But if we were to look back from the end of our life, would this thing matter? And even if we think about 5 years from now, is this thing going to matter? Whatever this thing might be. And if it does, great, stick it in your now box. If it doesn't, maybe it can go in your later box. Maybe it can go in the never box. Because it's not something, it's something that I've got into the habit of fretting about giving energy to, but perhaps I don't need to. So I think it's a really good exercise every now and again, just to take that moment of stop, even just to assess this thing that I'm giving all my energy to right now, or these things in my scattergun approach. Am I getting anywhere by doing that? Are they benefiting me? Are they benefiting anybody else around me? Or am I just throwing energy at something? Just to have that distraction and that busyness sometimes, because we get into that habit and that's not serving us.
Busy being busy.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm just thinking now how malleable this is, how there is no department that you phone up and say, excuse me, what do I put in this box, that box, the other box? It's your box. They're your boxes. You decide your priorities based upon your life. You decide exactly what you need to put in there, or there. It's not. It suits me really well because of the fact that it is personalized. It is what Robin wants to do as a priority isn't necessarily what Nigel wants to do as a priority. Certain outside factors dictate that certain things will go there, or there. Because like you say, you can't change the weather. You can't influence, apart from a tiny little bit, government policy. You can't, apart from in a small amount, influence a lot of other people's behavior. You can influence it from the point of view of saying, I can put what I think out into the world. I can give my help, my influence, my information, but you can't, you can give it, but you can't make people take it.
Yeah, or control what they do with it.
Sorry?
Or control what they do with it.
Yeah,
How
exactly.
they choose to take your advice or your information or anything.
Yeah. But this is for you. This is, I'm talking to everybody who might be watching this podcast now, not just between the two of us. I'm just saying about the fact that you can make this whatever color, whatever shape. You could put fur on it. You could make it big, small, up, down, left, right, whatever. That's part of the fun of this, as far as I'm concerned. Because I'm not going to bother boring people by describing these boxes in my mind, but they have a specific shape. They have a specific size. And they're actually, I'll give you one little clue, they're not actually sitting right next to each other. There's a whole hours podcast there, isn't there? Whoa, what do Nigel's boxes look like?
We're intrigued now. And I think for me, it's very much about bringing play in, bringing fun in. So like you say, if you want to cover it in glitter or sequins or whatever floats your boat,
Yeah,
whatever
it's
makes
your
it
mind. Do what you like.
yours.
It's your mind. It's your head.
Yeah. And you can change it.
Yeah. That's something that you talk about a lot, don't you? About like something not being constant.
Yes. The one change in life, one constant in life, sorry, is change. I kind of messed up that
Yeah.
punchline. But I love
Do you want to do that? Do you want to do that again?
the one constant in life is change. And it's
Ta-da! Yeah,
I
you're
love
right. Yeah.
paradoxes. I love paradoxes. So that really tickles me. And I love things that blow my mind. Quantum physics. That book I was talking about from Joe Dispenza, it's big into its quantum physics. And I just love that idea where you can get everything that you feel that you're holding or you're carrying, or that you know, or you think you know, and throw it up in the air.
Yeah.
And then it kind of it creates a shift, and it creates possibility for change, and it creates possibility for things to land differently, and you can then see a whole new perspective, which obviously is another big thing that I talk about,
Yeah.
perspective and how we look at things and how we see things, and come at it from just like take a walk the other way around, or drink a different cup of coffee when you go to the coffee shop that you go to, or out of a different mug if you're drinking at home. And just those small changes can just give our kind of habits a little shake up. There's a saying that maybe our life isn't falling apart, maybe it's falling together. But even that shift and change is uncomfortable initially because we're still kind of finding our feet, and how is it going to look, and what's going to be different, and how does that work? That doesn't mean it's bad. It's a little bit disconcerting initially, it's a little bit maybe uncomfortable, but when we can get comfortable with being uncomfortable in, just little bits initially, just seeing like, how is this going to work out? I know it's not quite like you were talking about a coat that you can take on and off before. This is a coat that feels different. Even just going from one season to another, and maybe from winter into spring, I want lighter clothes now because it's getting warmer, but they feel different because that's not what I've been wearing all the way through the winter. Or I'm walking around barefoot at the moment because allegedly it's summer. So it's going to feel weird to put my shoes back on.
Yeah. Supposedly, yeah.
Yeah. It's the UK. It was bank
Yeah.
holiday weekend. What can we expect? So when I put my shoes back on, my feet are going to feel like, oh, that's alien. But not in a bad way, just in a, oh, that's different.
I don't know if people play with discomfort. I don't know if that's. I think we'd have to just sort of think about that and maybe discuss that a bit more deeply next
Mm,
time, because I don't. I think it's a step forward, but it's like a big leap forward for some people to sort of play with discomfort. They don't want discomfort of any side, any sort of type.
yeah.
They don't.
Yeah.
They can't see that it can be a change factor. They can't see that it can be something that can hopefully, and I mean, not always, obviously, discomfort can just be discomfort, it's full stop. But it can also be a change factor that moves things around in a positive way, or at least moves things around rather than remaining stagnant. Anyway, I
Yeah.
think we'll talk about that maybe in another
Yes,
one.
I think
What
I
I was going
think
to
that's
say
quite a big
was, yeah, as I think that's a probably one in its own right, I suppose. But it just came to my head then when you were talking. What I was going to say was, I wonder if people are watching this, if they think, we said in the very first podcast about the fact that our approaches are slightly different, but we're still trying to get to that same point, right? We're still trying to get to that central point where the information that we give out, the sort of advice, any skills that we may or may not have in life are utilized for the purpose of making people's well-being more positive, making them be as good as they can be in the circumstances. So you didn't know I was going to ask you this, but so far, do you think that our approaches have it turned out to be that different, or are they similar? There's obviously areas that we very much agree with, but do you think our approaches are that much different?
I think the way that we work is probably addressing different areas of things, and maybe slightly different approaches. But I think by and large, our views are quite similar. Yeah, and like you say, we're aiming for the same goal. And we're probably on paths that are right next to each other. I don't think we're extremely different paths, because sometimes a path that looks very, very different is still coming to the same goal.
Yeah.
But I feel that they're further away from the path that I'm walking on. Whereas I feel I can wave across to you and call across to you. I don't feel you're that far away.
Oh, shucks, that's nice, isn't it? Oh, there we are. In that same vein, at the end of this particular podcast, the same as all the others, you will see details. You'll see Robin on the top with her details regarding her email address. And underneath, you will see me with details of my email address, or, the email address for Interact. If you do want to get in touch with us, if you want to contact us on a more personal basis, rather than just leaving comments on, I don't know, Facebook or on YouTube or whatever, please do, because we're not necessarily only sitting here from the point of view of saying we know what we can do for you. We also are very interested in your opinions, your questions, your thoughts. And as I've said before, Robin, as long as there's no expletives, as long as they're polite, all observations and questions are welcome. Am I right?
Absolutely. We would love to hear from you. So please do, if you've got any questions, any comments, either stick them here in the public forum or communicate with us privately if you prefer.
Excellent. Okay. That's number 3 done, I believe, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. I had to think about that then. It is number 3, I can assure you.
It is 3,
Thank
but
you
it's
very much
taken 3
for
attempts.
listening, for watching. Sorry, go on.
No, carry on.
No, you should.
Anyway.
I'll listen to what you said afterwards. I'll go back to that. Thank you very much for listening and or watching from myself and from
me, Robin.
Thank you very much. This is a communication, not a lecture. Please do get in touch if you think it's appropriate to do so. If you want to ask anything, if you want to say anything, we're up for it.
Thank you and bye-bye.
Bye.